I found myself really miserable. I had moved from there to pharmaceutical sales and thought to myself, well, what do I like? Who am I? I had no idea that they even had this ready-to-wear component or that they were a fashion brand before a quote-unquote swimwear brand. And when I found that out, oh my gosh, this has massive, massive opportunity and nobody knows about it. And the sky is the limit. My motto is, okay, I'm tough but fair. But looking back, I was definitely always fair, but I was more tough than I needed to be. What that helped me realize is that be kinder to myself. And once you start doing that, I could be kinder to others. All of a sudden, everyone's blowing me up, saying, did you hear what happened? The handbook had been leaked. And I thought, okay, this has gotten ugly.
Hi, Alexa. Welcome to All Over Again podcast.
Hi, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
It's so fun to see you. It has been a minute. How did you end up in New York City?
I actually moved here, and I shouldn't be saying this because feminists everywhere will be coming for my head. I moved here for my husband, actually. I had graduated from San Diego State, and I was working and starting my career. And we met, and we started dating long distance. And you know San Diego, it's a very large but small city because of the universities. I knew I wanted to leave San Diego, but my plan had been to go up to San Francisco and move in with my best friend from high school. And then I met John, and we started dating long distance. And I knew I wanted to live in a major city, and so it seemed like the best thing to do. We didn't move in together or anything like that, but it was for a relationship.
And if you had moved in together, it would be totally fine too.
No, it would, no. meaning I at least knew to keep that part of my independence.
Wait, how did you end up in fashion? It's so funny because I know you from our San Diego State days. And I know you from our fun nights out in New York City and out east. But I don't even know how you got into fashion. Were you always in fashion?
No. I mean, I majored in communication and with an emphasis in international relations. I speak 3 languages, and I thought I wanted to be in business in corporate America. And I did start my career in that sense. I started for ADP, which is the largest payroll company in the world. And my goal was just to make my way up to a CEO somewhere. And I found myself really miserable. I had moved from there to pharmaceutical sales, which I thought was very, very boring for me. Was not something I saw for the future. And so I took a long step back and thought to myself, well, what do I like? Who am I? I mean, I was young. I was 25 at the time. And I said, I've always loved fashion. And I have this sales background, albeit a small tenure of sales background with ADP and pharmaceutical sales. And I like selling, and I like people, and I like, the money that comes from sales. Is there a career? And I had no idea. Is there a career in sales and fashion? And I had no idea. So I started my career, it would have been 23 years ago in fashion as a salesperson on the wholesale side of things.
And just worked your way up, and you attained your goal. You became CEO like several times over now, right?
This is my first role as a CEO. I've been presidents of divisions before, but this is my first CEO position.
At Kiki.
At Kiki
De Montparnasse.
Oui, yes.
Oui. I love this. Okay, so what was it like to be in New York City in the fashion world? Because I feel like there's a lot of glamour and glitz and what have you. So tell us what it was really like.
So on the wholesale side of things, you're only as good as your last sale, right? And then it's also being aware. I've always been aware of what's going on with my adjacent brands, who's coming up alongside me, or not the brand that I work for, and not only that, the salespeople or the publicists or the community of fashion people that I've come up in this industry with. And I will say it's extremely fast-paced. There's definitely a glamour element to it. I'm not going to lie about that. But behind the scenes, it's like any other business, right? You don't want everyone peeling under the hood anytime. And we have our trade secrets. We have things that go on, things that go wrong. But it's just a very, very, very fast-paced environment. And it's highly competitive. And you have to be a thought leader. In whatever your area of expertise is, whether you're a designer, whether you're on the business side of fashion. And, you know, it's a global industry what fashion is in New York is very different to what it is in Paris, what it is in London, to what it is in LA. And so you just have to really have your finger on the pulse of what's happening all the time in fashion across different facets. You know, that's really what it boils down to if you want to be successful.
And so at Zimmerman, I feel like I don't know. I saw you along the way. I never really associated you as being like from a professional sense, right? Because we were always having fun. We were always out and about. Right. It felt very glamorous and glitzy, whatever we were doing, even if it was just like at like some literally a barnyard event on the beach.
Right.
I feel like Zimmerman was this sort of like very glamorous, glitzy moment, and you were wearing a lot of different hats. Was there a moment where you're like, wow, so this is, and you're on the other side of it, right? So you're like, oh, this is not as glamorous and glitzy as everybody thinks it is. But tell everyone, if you don't mind, like, what was this moment where you're like, wow, pinch me. I'm working for this now iconic brand, and this is my fashion forward life.
For me, it wasn't pinch me. For me, it was the Zimmermans really, it was important to them to grow their business outside of Australia. In Australia, if you're going to have a fashion brand, you have to be retail and wholesale. You cannot have and sustain a business without opening stores. So when I came along, I was their agent and had other brands. And I had no idea that they even had this ready-to-wear component or that they were a fashion brand before a quote-unquote swimwear brand. And when I found that out, I guess that was a pinch me like, oh my gosh, this has massive, massive opportunity and nobody knows about it. And the sky is the limit. I felt that. I felt that for the brand. I felt it for Nikki and Simone Zimmerman and the CEO, Chris Oliver, who's Nikki's husband. I felt it for all three of them and just their vision and what they represented. And I really wanted to take that story and bring it to the Northern Hemisphere. You know, they had their foothold, obviously, in Australia. And I really, really thought that, and I knew from the very beginning that their lifestyle, and even them bringing me to Australia to see what their brand was all about and to understand, to go to their stores, to integrate me into their business there. When I was still an agent, I hadn't even gone into becoming an employee of the company. And that was sort of the pinch me of like, okay, I can do this. The pinch me of, oh my God, this is amazing, didn't come until several years later in terms of like, okay, this is what I've done, or what we've done, because it wasn't just me. But I just, there wasn't a moment where I didn't feel that this would become an iconic brand. And I very much knew I needed to be a part of it. Any
brand, like, you know, dressing room stories that are so funny because of all of the interesting people, you know, that you had to deal with? I mean, at any brand, you have these moments where you have to deal with public figures. I mean, I've been there, not in fashion, but on other sides of things, and I've got some very interesting stories. Anything that you can share that you were just like, are you fucking kidding me?
It wouldn't have been at Zimmerman. It would have been when I worked for Andy Hilfiger, and he was the CEO of J.Lo. And I think one of the funniest moments is we were casting for Jennifer's runway show for Sweet Face. That I came into work for her brand Sweet Face, which was at her advanced contemporary brand. And we were casting. It's actually a funny story. Naomi Campbell is sitting in the lobby, wanting to go in for her casting, and all of a sudden there's all this ruckus. And at the time, and her first name is going to escape me, Paul McCartney's now ex-wife, who was very much Heather, who was very much part of PETA, and Jennifer at that time, and this is before they started pulling furs off of floors at retailers. We had so much fur that we were using, real fur, and so she comes up through the elevator and she's protesting, save the animals, save the animals. Naomi Campbell is just sitting there watching this all go down. Our CFO comes out, who's like the 60-year-old man trying to diffuse the situation. Our publicist wasn't in-house. And so I'm kind of just peeking. The funniest part of the story is that, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, Heather has a prosthetic, fell off.
Oh no.
And basically stops the protest and says, can you guys help me put this back on? So that was kind of and everyone did help her. So I think what it does is it sums up in fashion. Okay, so we have this person who's so anti what it is that we're doing, what we represent. You have this iconic model sitting in the room just acting like it's all normal, and you just move on with your day. So there's a lot of that in fashion, right? There's a lot of these chaotic, frenzied, oh my gosh, stop the presses moment. You fix it and you move on. And at the end of the day, for the most part, everyone is friends.
Like almost a fashion emergency.
Almost a fashion emergency.
So to that end, once she got her prosthetic back on, did she go back to No.
I think at that point she knew it was time to leave.
Okay. Because that would really be amazing if she's like, okay, thanks, and save the animals again.
No, at that point, she knew it was time to go.
So, is there a moment within your career where you're just like, wow, this shaped me personally?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this as I was listening to some of your other amazing guests you've had. For me, it was becoming a manager and managing, I was at Zimmerman for, 14 years of my career. And I went from employee number one internally to, by the time I left our flagship office in New York, corporately was 35 people, and that, 500 employees around the world. But so I had never managed anyone before. I started with them when I was in my 20s, and I was with them until, I was a couple of years into my 40s. So I was with them for some very pivotal moments in my life personally. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned about managing people, especially young women in this industry. Not anymore, but then I didn't know how to do it. And because I wasn't necessarily being kind to myself, because I had the pressure of growing this business, and I put that pressure on myself, but there was obviously the pressure of growing this business and proving out to do what I wanted to do. And then, my motto was, okay, I'm tough but fair. But looking back, I probably was more tough. I was definitely always fair, but I was more tough than I needed to be. And what that helped me realize is that, okay, be kinder to myself. And once you start doing that, I could be kinder to others. And I also think, I have 7 nieces and nephews who that range from 8 years old to 19 years old, and 3 of them are young girls. And along the way, I started asking myself, okay, how would I want them to be spoken to and treated in this environment? So I think that has really been, and I'm very well aware of it to this day. That probably happened a good 10 years ago. And now I am very, very thoughtful in how I lead. My expectations are still always going to be what my expectations are, which are high. But I'm just kinder to myself, and I'm kinder to those around me during those frenzied, high pressure, stressful times than I was back then.
Part of it is a confidence thing, isn't it? Right? It's our own stuff.
Yeah.
That we have yet to sort of figure out. So we put it on other. I mean, I've been there in different, I've been there in different ways, right? Like in work, you put these high pressure stakes on yourself, right? And then by virtue of doing that, you put it on other people. And not every single person is going to have the same, tenacious, ambitious, expectations or standards even that you do, right? So I feel that. And when you say kinder to yourself, what does that mean?
It just means that, even to this day, I have to talk myself off of a ledge. You know what I mean? To just meaning, like, it's going to be okay. There is a solution to whatever problem I'm faced with. Especially now being a CEO and leading so many different divisions and, really having to watch that P&L, that is a huge, huge pressure that I wake up with every single day. So it's having conversations with myself and saying, okay, and really having conversations with the people that I trust the most to help me too. And not that I'm looking for them to give me affirmations, but it just sort of happens, and then I absorb it and I move on with my day. And I think just those little things in receiving the affirmations or accepting them and believing them, because probably 5, 7, 10 years ago, I was like, what? They don't know what they're talking about. I'm not really that great. I'm not really that good. I'm not really that smart. You know what I mean? Like, to your point, confidence, maturity, just evolving, all of those things. So, and being kinder to myself and accepting those affirmations, it's almost like I can pay it forward. So when someone does a good job, I'm the first to say, great job. You did spectacular. And that's something, and this too, that has shifted a lot, not just in fashion, but I think in the world in general. I didn't get a ton of compliments or good jobs or pats on the backs or high fives as I was making some pretty, big feats. I got thanked in other ways, I got rewarded in other ways, but there wasn't a lot of those types of conversations, like, and which I'm, again, being that I can have those with the people that I love, accept those positive things that they're telling me about myself, I can certainly pay that forward. And it's important to me too, to do that to the people that work for me, whether they're male or female.
Do you feel like it's lonely at the top?
Yes, I was actually just having this conversation with my friend 2 days ago. It's very lonely. Very, 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 very lonely. Yeah.
Like, if something goes wrong, you can't be like, okay. What it's so hard. It was interesting because I've spoken with other CEOs. It's like, you can't really tell anyone when, the building is burning down because you want everyone to remain calm.
Right.
But at the same time, that's so much pressure for yourself, and you're always expected to have the answer.
Yeah.
Right? But you are very experienced. But sometimes some of these situations that we're all faced with are new.
Yeah.
And they're new for everybody. Yeah. Even seasoned CEOs.
Yep. I think that for this particular role, walking into this business, it was the person whom I was taking over for wasn't ready to let go. So there was an energy my first day where everyone thought, okay, this is a new CEO. This is a new sheriff in town, for lack of a better word. So, and the rumor mill had started before I started. Oh, she's going to fire everyone. She's going to bring in her own team. And so I started in a very lonely situation. And
everyone was afraid of you.
Everyone was afraid of, I guess, but I didn't even think of any. I was afraid that they, and they probably did, wouldn't like me, or they probably didn't, excuse me. But I knew it was important for me that I commanded that respect, and that but I didn't demand it. You know what I mean? It was a very, very, very tricky situation to walk into. So what I decided to do is I decided to observe the existing team. And I very quickly realized who my allies were and who were not. And so I was able to navigate that in a way that, again, taking from my playbook, from learning lessons, and say, okay, I am going to kill those who are not on my side with kindness. And I am going to reward those very quickly who are, and give them motivation to stay as part of the team, because I wanted them to stay as part of the team. You know, the ones that, like I said, I was observing, and I saw how much they loved the brand, how hard they worked for the brand, and how hard they worked for themselves, and now for me. And so I needed to, I think, see all of that. But then, like I said, it's only me observing, right? It's not like someone sitting next to me and was saying, okay, yeah, this person, that person. You know what I mean? It's just me having to make those observations and make decisions, and then bring them to the board and keep moving on.
Did you feel, again, even though you are seasoned, you have all of this knowledge, this experience, did you feel like you had to prove yourself?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you this question because I feel like it's so important for people to understand that even when you get to the very top of things, I don't know if it's a female thing or what. Tell us more about why you felt like you had to prove yourself, because I think that this is a recurring theme I am hearing. I have never been a CEO outside of my own, small business.
That's a CEO, though.
I mean, a different sort.
Yeah,
in a corporation, I had different roles, right? So I would love to hear your thoughts in terms of that, because it doesn't have to be so lonely, but everybody is not talking about it.
I think it's something, you're correct. I think it's something that I always used to say, I'm not a competitive person. I have 2 younger siblings. I'm competitive with myself. And so I think it starts with, we want to prove it to ourselves. And we're our own, and I don't want to say worst, we're our own best adversary, right?
I feel this. I get it. I've lived this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so with that, you're like, okay, I have to believe this. And this is where stupid imposter syndrome comes in for women, right?
Yes.
And it's such a thing. You're like, ugh, okay. So you have this like best adversary situation. You're feeling imposter syndrome. And then you're supposed to walk in the door and say, everyone believe me. It's a wonderful day. I'm wonderful. I know what I'm doing, because it starts with you, right? So again, that's part of talking to yourself, being kinder to yourself. But I think that it won't go away, especially at this level, because I do have to prove myself to the board. It's not my company. So to the person who gave me this opportunity, I do have to prove myself to him. I'm very fortunate that he's a very kind and hands-off leader. But then there are people that are on this team that have been there for 4 years. They know the DNA of this brand. I mean, I know it, but sometimes I'm feeling, okay, maybe they know it a little bit better than me. You know what I mean? So it's stuff like that where I feel that I'm going to always need to prove myself, because I'm telling myself I have to. I think it comes from within.
Because you're so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And it's still a learning curve, because no matter where you start, when it's new, it's always a learning curve.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's always funny, because I always say, you don't know what you don't know. I had walked into this brand that is the brand equity is beautiful. It's just one of those brands that everyone truly loves. But it hadn't been watered the right way for 4 years. So I started making changes right away good ones too. But again, I know that there were questions. And so as long as I can prove that my decisions are the right ones to myself, but I know that they'll follow suit.
Is it your goal to bring back Kiki De Montparnasse? I love saying it.
It's a good one to say.
The same level of prestige and brand equity that it once had?
100%. So my whole career has been doing that for brands. You know, when I went in-house, when I started working with Zimmerman as an agent, they had already been around for 15 years. A lot of people don't know that. They think that this brand just exploded 5 years ago. It's a 32-year-old brand. I basically had to start over for them. They had some great sales before I came on board, but they had been selling to Victoria's Secret and Bloomingdale's, you know, and the one thing that Nikki Zimmerman, when I met with her, I said, okay, what is your magic wand? What do you want? And God rest Barney's soul, but, you know, she goes, I really just want to be in Barney's. And I said, okay, I see where you're going with this. She wanted to elevate her brand in the Northern Hemisphere. So that was, that took a lot of doing. And then when I went to Millie, the brand had been bought in bankruptcy court, and the company that bought it had said this is disintegrating before our very eyes. And again, at that point, that brand had been around for 17, 18 years. And so I had to rebuild that back up. And then now with Kiki, it's because it wasn't, like I said, watered in the right way from a commerce standpoint, not from a design and not from a creative standpoint, but from a commerce standpoint, from the website to the wholesale to, you know, we did have 2 retail stores. It just had not been nurtured. And so it's basically a garden, this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful garden that is all tumbleweeds and dead leaves and sad little bushes that need to be just brought back to life. And that's what I'm here to do, you know.
And I'm loving this that you're wearing.
Oh, thanks.
And I want to learn more about that later. So let's bring this back to you for a moment. Mm-hmm. So Alexa, knowing everything that you know now in your life personally, is there anything that you would do all over again?
Yeah, I mean, I would go through what I went through as a child in the Bay Area in Northern California and go the path where I went to university, moving to New York. And I'm saying that because they all were revolutionary parts of me as a human, as someone who's half of me is first generational and the other half is not.
First generational?
First generation. My mom is from El Salvador, and she migrated here when she was 18. She was going to community college in upstate New York, and then she met my father. I was born in upstate, but I was raised in California. Where I was raised was this beautiful, quaint town about 45 minutes from San Francisco called Pleasanton, and it was pleasant. But my mom, because she had never experienced the simple things like homecoming or cheerleading, and I should say too, she left. My grandparents sent her to boarding school when she was 9, and then they sent her to America at 18. So she had never been around or raised in actually boarding school in El Salvador, not in America. Anyways, so she didn't have any of the experiences that I was about to have, simple from like spending the night at a slumber party, spending the night at friends' houses, like I said, homecoming, sorority, like all of the things that were part of me and, you know, what I wanted to do for myself. It was this like battle almost because she didn't understand it fundamentally, because she hadn't experienced it or lived it. Whereas my dad, you know, who grew up in very rural upstate New York was so excited by all of it. So I had this juxtaposition of like, I wish my dad could sprinkle some of his excitement on my mom. You know what I mean? And my mom was sort of acting like this strict father. It set the tone for me as a woman because the whole time, which I didn't know then, but I know now, she was breaking boundaries, trailblazing her own way through a career while having 3 children. And the experiences that I was having, like, so when I was growing up in Pleasanton, I would always get asked the question, what are you? And I didn't really understand what that meant. I'm like, oh, I'm me. No, what are you? You're not Hispanic because you're white, but you speak Spanish, so does that make you Mexican? And this just goes to show the ignorance and the time, it was the time, because again, being from California at that time, most of the people that I went to school with were Mexican, that if they were Hispanic, right? Sure. Not all of them, but that was just, again, the ignorance that people had. People actually asked me, do you speak Mexican? So I went through these things and looking back, I cannot believe that I went through them, but these were the things that I did go through. So that was from, elementary school through high school, different bits and pieces of weird things like that. But again, hindsight is 20/20. Looking back, I'm like, okay, that was, holy cow, it probably was a little traumatizing when you're coming of age. You know what I mean?
And people are singling you out as being different somehow.
That's exactly what it was, being different somehow. And I didn't feel different.
Right.
But that, again, that helps sort of shape you. And then when I went to San Diego State, it's such a huge university, and all of a sudden there are so many, it's such a diverse university, from, religion to different, people coming from different parts of the world, people actually coming and crossing the border from Mexico to go to class. I mean, I had classes with them. And again,
legally.
Yes.
Legally. I have to share, yes. Because we had friends who lived in Tijuana. I remember that.
Yeah. We would go too. We crossed the border legally, freely all the time.
Yeah.
18-year-olds.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Bad idea. But worst idea.
Don't let your daughters do it.
It's a different world now. Or maybe it always was, but it feels really different now. I think now that we look back.
It does. Oh. But again, it was this time where, okay, I feel a little bit more rooted in myself. Like there's all different types of people versus this, homogenous upbringing I'd had in Pleasanton, California. And so
it's amazing independence.
Yeah.
It's a foundation moment. Of course you wanted to come to New York City, because where else can you possibly be, subjected to so many different things that are amazing. Yeah. But at the same time, you can be anonymous at the same time.
Exactly.
And San Diego State kind of felt like that in a smaller way.
Until we joined our sorority life.
True.
But I loved that.
But then there was the beach. And you could just hide out if you wanted to.
And that was part of why I chose to join a sorority, is because I wanted that small community back, because I had grown up in a smaller town, and, it was not highly populated, and I wanted that sense of intimacy. And I thought
sisterhood.
The sisterhood,
yeah.
And even with, the fraternities too, and the guys next door. You know what I mean? Totally. All that kind of, your brothers from another mother type situation. Yes. I grew up with that, and I thought that this sorority, the sorority and fraternity life gave me that, and I don't regret it for one moment. And then in moving to New York, all of a sudden people are coming up to me and just speaking Spanish to me out of the blue. That had never happened to me in the entire time between Northern and Southern California. And I was so confused. And then my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, said, "What do you mean? You're Latina. Like, you look Latina." And I said, "I do?" Because I had spent this entire time, my entire childhood being asked what I am. No, you're not. Are you this? Are you that? How can you be? You speak Mexican. And then all of a sudden I come here and someone starts speaking Spanish to me out of the blue, asking for directions, and I give it to them. But then something really weird happened. I started not wanting to speak Spanish to people because or to respond to them, or if they knew that they spoke Spanish, not wanting to speak to them in Spanish. And I look back now, there was some sort of shame associated with it, which is so silly and so weird, but I didn't know what I was, so to speak. You know what I mean? And then again, it was my husband and my friends who helped me get over it. They're like, "This is amazing. You speak these languages. Just speak them. Own it. Who cares?" And then I just sort of shed that and got over it. But those were the 3 things, if I could do to have gone through those 3 parts of my life, what I went through as a child, and that, like, it wasn't teasing. It was that, I guess, me tolerating total ignorance. And then moving to San Diego and sort of being like, "Oh my God, okay, there's a whole world out there for real." And then coming to New York and just really, I guess it's full circle, accepting that I am this half Latina, half, I guess, American, for lack of a better word, or, Caucasian person who had to go through all of that to just full circle help me be who I am. And really, I've always had an international mindset, but I think it started way back then with, "What are you? What do you mean you speak these?" I always knew I was a little bit different, and my story is not like so unique. I'm just saying that those things had to happen to me to really, really, understand who I am and what it is that I have to offer to the world.
And it is your story. And that's why it's so important to share. And it's interesting because you go back to coming to New York City and it really opening your eyes and actually helping you shed the shame that you didn't even realize that you had.
Right.
And why did you have shame, right? Like, what is the root cause of the shame? It's from being different. Somehow not understanding or wanting to accept the difference is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get this in a different way, different context. I am first generation American as well. I don't know if we've ever talked about that.
No, I didn't know that.
My mom is from France. She's from Paris. And my father was from Warsaw, Poland. And so, I ate different foods. And yeah, maybe they were fancy, but they were weird. Right?
Yeah.
I was the only kid with, sounds amazing now, but a baguette sandwich with butter and ham and cheese. And everyone else had peanut butter and jelly. Back when you could have all this peanut butter stuff at school. Or before nut allergies.
Right.
And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is so weird. I wanted so badly to change my name. Like, so badly. I hated that people would butcher my name. Now it's funny.
Right.
But back then I was like, my name is not Nathalie. It's Natalie. And like, why did my parents give me this name?
Right.
I want to change my name to Jenny. I wanted to be Jennifer and go by Jenny. All of my Cabbage Patch dolls were Jenny.
Right. It's called assimilation, right? You wanted to be more American than the American, right?
Yes.
Like that's exactly, I 100% get that.
Because I was like, I felt weird.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So going back to all over again and your all over again story, like, is there anything along the way in that? Obviously, you can't change those experiences and you've learned from them. Is there anything where you say like, okay, like, I regret that I didn't do this, or I would have done this moment differently that was in fact a pivotal moment within those places and spaces?
Yeah. I wish I wouldn't, when I moved to New York, had resisted being a Spanish speaking person and just sort of denying that, because to your point earlier, there was so much rooted in being weird that I spent too much time worrying about it. So I wish that I would have been strong enough to be like, this is amazing. This isn't weird. You know what I mean? Like, thank goodness my mom ensured that I would speak these languages and, was the way that she was. So I own it better. I wish that I would have owned it sooner.
And now you do.
Yeah, I do.
And what would you say to someone else who's trying to assimilate and be normal and be a Jenny?
Jenny. I do believe in the power of choice in somebody, but I would say to them, perhaps, don't be so hard on yourself. You're not weird. You know what I mean? Jenny, for every Jenny, there's a Julia. You know what I mean? I would just really try to tell them to focus on the good of what it is and not being a Jenny, what they have to bring to the table. Yeah, that's what I would do.
And being unique is cool. So I have a question for you that I meant to ask you earlier. You lived through the Me Too movement in the fashion industry in New York City. Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell me about that experience.
So while it started as obviously as a male to female hashtag Me Too harassment and beyond that, obviously we know so many people personally. Yeah. What was interesting is to see women CEOs, leaders getting called out in various different ways it was a hashtag Me Too thing, for being bullies, for not being thoughtful leaders. What also scared me a lot with this whole hashtag Me Too was the amount of bigotry that was coming out within the fashion industry. That was really an awakening for me, because that had never been my experience at all within it. Like I didn't, you know what I mean? Like not with any of the companies that I worked for. And then when I had left Zimmerman, so this was in 2020, all of a sudden everyone's blowing me up saying, did you hear what happened with Zimmerman? And I'm not sure if you're aware at the time, but it was basically the handbook the retail staff handbook had been leaked. And basically through all of that, all of this stuff came out that was so not true and so disorienting, because I had spent not about me, about the brand and about the people, the leaders of the brand. And I thought, okay, this has gotten ugly. So
I think I'm hearing you say is that the company was dissected so thoroughly that they found fault where there actually wasn't any, and they created it. I actually feel like this is ongoing with this Me Too, honestly, feminism movement. Yeah, right. That we're in.
But I think that's the whole thing. It's like, okay, wait a minute. And this is, by the way, when they're really rising up to their success. Do you want to bring something or somebody down? Why? So that is what, for me, I think it's absolutely, it was imperative that this movement happen for the victims to have a voice.
Yes.
100%.
Totally.
What always concerned me was that it became a crutch for those who maybe weren't treated the way that they wanted to be treated, but it wasn't necessarily the extreme. You know what I mean? And I'm saying this in a very fine way because it happened a lot within fashion. Like, come on, guys. You're making us sound like we're a bunch of evil people that don't have any kindness in us. And that's simply not true, you know? And so I think that for me, the whole #MeToo movement within fashion really crept on a line that I felt was a bit unnecessary for as far as some people were willing to go to bring people down. And that concerned me. I think it's leveled itself out a lot, but I think that maybe fashion did need a reckoning in that way for people to take a deeper look. That I didn't really have so much experience with it as someone within the fashion industry, as a leader within the fashion industry. I just know that coming out of it, you know, all those bully things that we had to do, like I don't know if you had to do if you were still in corporate America, but you had to, the state of New York. Yeah, I had to do all of that kind of stuff. I was like, maybe that is what's good. Maybe that is what needed to come out of it.
There was some good, and I think there was some bad that came out of it. Yeah. I think just like anything, right? When you become, I shouldn't say, like the wokeism that has reached its, I think, hopefully its height in this country. It's like there's a balance.
That's exactly
there's a good reason for these things, but when it goes to a point where it actually starts to hurt the people it was intended to protect.
That's exactly right.
It becomes a problem. And we're seeing this so much. Yeah. It seems to be continuing with Me Too, with feminism. Like, these are all things that I was on board with. Right. And now I feel like it's getting of course I'm all about supporting women and women's rights. It's gotten to the point where it actually, in some cases, is hurting women, and it's hurting everyone else in the process.
Well, isn't being a woman, but isn't feminism like the root of it to have been given that choice, right?
To be given a choice and to believe women when they tell you, right? You're supposed to believe someone when they tell you who they are and
what they want. Like, if I want to stay home and bake cakes and darn my husband's socks,
I can't say look at you.
No, I'm being. I'm not. No, I'm just saying. But like,
but that's your choice.
But as a fellow woman,
that's your choice.
I shouldn't feel judged by that. No, maybe you don't agree with it.
I had to laugh because it's you. Right. But like
no, but feminism is supposed to be a safe space for whatever your choice is. That's the type of feminist I always strive to be. It's like, okay,
absolutely.
It just sucks that we as women have to be the ones to make that choice. Men aren't sitting around saying, "Oh, I wish I didn't take that like job that, you know, did X, Y, and Z." And that's fine, because I'm not taking anything away from men at all. I just think that, again, feminism is a very, very, it's still a fine thread, right? And we as women shouldn't cut or break whatever that thread is for any other woman. We just shouldn't, because then that to me is not being a feminist. Now you're back to just being sexist against your own sex.
Absolutely. Right?
So, yeah.
So in this industry that is supposed to be so feminist but isn't always, is there sort of a darker underbelly that you've seen in the fashion industry? Not maybe in your own experience, but listen, you were in it. So have you seen that within the fashion world in general? Or do you feel like... Just tell me about your experience.
I don't think darkness is the right word to use, because there's not, in my experience, there hasn't been a darkness. I do believe there's been isolated incidents, you know, when models have not been treated a certain way, which is horrible, and that should never be anyone's experience. But I don't think that that's an overarching darkness. I think there's isolated incidents just like any other corporation. You know what I mean?
Where men are taking advantage of women.
Correct. Exactly. However, I do believe the competitiveness and the pressure to outdo your last runway show, outdo your last collection, come up with the new, cool and new content, all of the things that go along with being a cool and edgy brand or preserving your brand equity. I think there can be a undertone of cattiness if we're not careful. I'm very, very lucky in the sense that the women I've worked for, the men I've worked for, and the community that I've made with some of my best friends, we've come up together. But don't get me wrong, there are things that go, again, like any other situation.
Of course.
But that's where it could be. If we aren't careful, it could be like the cattiness, like the claws could come out, for lack of a better word. And I think that is as dark, quote unquote, dark as it gets in my perception. But I also do think that because of everything that's happened, going back to Me Too, the Me Too movement, and where we're at in this world, is that people are more aware of it and trying to not be that way. And I think that goes back to, this movement in wellness, and whether it's beauty or health or all of that kind of stuff. I think that and being aware of mental health, I think that we just have to always be aware that we're on the edge of something can teeter either way if we're not careful.
It's fair points. And so if there were any words of wisdom that you could share with young women, even men that are coming into the world of fashion and how to navigate, what would they be?
You have to want it more than anybody. No matter if you're a designer, if you are in marketing, if you're on, the wholesale or retail side of things, you have to want this more than anybody, because it doesn't work, especially in fashion. And I think this is a result of the rise of, TikTok stars and social media influencers and all of that. And that's all fine. I love all of that. However, those people, it wasn't easy for them either. And they really wanted it. They really wanted it for themselves more than any, you know what I mean? Every social media makes everything look really easy, and it's not. And it's very glamorous all the time. So you have to take the guts with the glory when it comes to fashion, and be okay with it. You know what I mean? And do it with levity. You have to have a sense of, I really truly believe that you have to have a sense of humor in this industry. You really do.
It can be tough.
It can be really tough.
I mean, fashion and beauty.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Alexa.
Thank you.
Do you have any parting words before we say goodbye?
Thanks for having me, Natalie.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I absolutely loved seeing you after all this time. I love that this was an excuse for us to catch up.
Me too. Thanks.